Imagine waking up one morning to find your wallet full of useless paper. The numbers in your bank account have vanished. The digital coins you held are now meaningless code. The only thing that can buy you a loaf of bread or a cup of coffee is a small, heavy, yellow piece of metal. This is a world where only gold is money. Not paper notes promising value, not digital entries in a ledger, but tangible, physical gold. This idea feels like a relic from a distant past, a return to a simpler, perhaps more brutal, economic age. We will explore what this world might look like. We will examine the causes, the consequences, and the hidden complexities of such a radical shift. This is a thought experiment about the very nature of money and trust. This essay will walk through the cascading effects of gold becoming the sole medium of exchange. We will look at the immediate changes to daily life, from the corner store to the international port. We will investigate how financial institutions like banks would fundamentally transform. The social and political consequences, from wealth inequality to the balance of global power, will be put under a microscope. Along the way, we will uncover a surprising benefit that such a rigid system might offer. We will also reveal a twist in the story, a shift in power that might not be obvious at first glance. Beat. If you find explorations like this compelling, tap like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more realities from IfVerse. The concept itself is a paradox of modernity. In an age of instant digital transactions and complex financial instruments, the return to a physical commodity seems backward. Yet, the appeal of gold persists. It represents a form of certainty in an uncertain world. Let us begin by setting the stage. This is not a story of fantasy, but a logical exploration of consequences. For a change this dramatic to occur, for the very concept of money to be rewritten, the existing system must first fail spectacularly. The global financial architecture, built on decades of intricate agreements and shared belief, is more fragile than we imagine. It rests on a single invisible pillar: trust. When that pillar cracks, the entire structure is doomed to collapse. The most likely cause is a catastrophic loss of trust, manifesting as hyperinflation that spirals completely out of control. This isn't just prices rising, it's the very meaning of money evaporating. Imagine your life's work, your pension, your plans for the future, all tied to a currency that is actively disintegrating. The paper money in people's hands loses its value not by the day, but by the hour, then by the minute. A lifetime of savings could be wiped out before lunch. The social fabric unravels. Store shelves are stripped bare, not because of scarcity, but because no one will accept worthless paper for real goods. In such a climate, people would desperately seek a safe haven for their wealth. They would flee from the abstract promises of fiat currency to the tangible reality of precious metals. A widespread flight to gold would not be a choice, but a primal necessity for survival, a return to a form of money that has outlasted empires. Another potential trigger is a systemic failure of the digital financial infrastructure. Our modern economy is a ghost in the machine, a complex dance of data packets and server handshakes. What happens when the music stops? A sophisticated cyber attack, a cascading software bug, or even a strategically deployed solar flare could cripple the network. If people cannot access their bank accounts, use their credit cards, or make digital payments, the economy would grind to a halt within hours. Commerce would cease, supply chains would break. The digital promise of wealth becomes a digital prison. In the ensuing chaos, a physical, offline medium of exchange would be required. Something you can hold that doesn't need a password or a network connection to acquire. Gold, being durable, divisible, and universally recognized, would be a natural candidate to fill the void. A third path isn't a sudden shock, but a slow, creeping erosion of faith in governments themselves. Decades of policies accumulating unpayable national debts could lead citizens to a simple, terrifying conclusion: the system is bankrupt. This is a crisis of confidence in the state's ability to manage its affairs and honor its promises. If a critical mass begins to believe the promises are empty, they will preemptively abandon the national currency, converting savings into assets they can physically hold and control. As more people demand gold, its value relative to paper money would soar. This creates a feedback loop, a death spiral for the currency. Every spike in the gold price further undermines confidence in the official money, accelerating its collapse until it is entirely abandoned. Any of these events, hyperinflation, technological collapse, or a total loss of political trust, could be the spark that ignites the funeral pyre of fiat money. Or, more likely, a combination of all three, feeding into one another in a perfect storm of economic destruction. Once the belief that paper money is worthless takes hold, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The collective illusion shatters. People would rush to trade their fading currency for something real, something tangible, something that cannot be printed into oblivion. The death of cash would not be a planned event orchestrated in a boardroom. It would be a chaotic, spontaneous, and popular revolt against a system that has lost its most essential ingredient: trust. It would be the inevitable outcome of broken promises. In this new reality, every transaction becomes a meticulous process of verification. Shops would be forced to invest in precise bench scales and handheld assay instruments. Larger retailers might even install small X-ray fluorescence machines to instantly test the purity of the gold presented. A costly but necessary defense against counterfeiting. This introduces a profound layer of friction into every economic interaction. The simple act of buying groceries could involve weighing out gold dust or verifying the authenticity of a small coin. The speed and convenience of modern digital commerce would become a distant memory, replaced by a slow, deliberate, and deeply tangible exchange. Every checkout line would feel like a visit to a pawn shop. Every business, from the smallest street vendor to the largest department store, would need to acquire and constantly calibrate these sensitive scales. This equipment itself becomes a significant capital expense, creating a new barrier to entry for aspiring entrepreneurs. Training staff to handle gold, spot sophisticated fakes, and accurately calculate value becomes a standard, ongoing cost. A slight discrepancy in weight or a dispute over purity could easily escalate into heated arguments, eroding the trust between merchants and customers. Consumer behavior would shift dramatically. With the hassle and finality of each gold payment, people would shop less frequently, making larger, more meticulously planned purchases. Impulse buys, the lifeblood of so much of the modern retail sector, would all but disappear. Life becomes more intentional, but also far less spontaneous. This pervasive friction acts as a powerful drag on all economic activity. The inherent inefficiency of physical barter means less commerce overall, leading to slower growth and a contraction of the economy. Many businesses, especially those built on high volume and low margins, would simply fail. The consequences for the financial system would be even more profound. The banking sector, as we know it, would cease to exist. Modern banks are built on the principle of fractional reserve lending, a system where they lend out far more money than they actually hold in deposits. Today, the vast majority of money is just digital data, entries in a ledger created with a keystroke. If gold is the only legitimate form of money, that entire model collapses overnight. The digital ocean of credit evaporates, leaving only a small, finite island of physical metals. In this world, banks could only lend the physical gold they physically possess in their bonds. Every single loan, from a small business loan to a home mortgage, would need 100% backing in solid metal. As a result, credit would shrink drastically, perhaps by over 90%. Banks would transform monetary business shifting from lending to simply storing and guarding gold for a future. On one hand, the financial system becomes incredibly stable. With all deposits fully backed by physical gold, the concept of a bank run would become a historical footnote. But this extreme stability comes at the steep price of dynamism. The scarcity of credit would put a deep chill on entrepreneurship and innovation. Economic growth is fundamentally fueled by borrowing, the ability to invest in future potential. Now, growth would be limited not by ambition or ideas, but by the amount of physical gold already saved. This could lead to generations of economic stagnation. Mortgages and other large loans would become extraordinarily difficult to obtain. To buy a house, you'd likely need to save the full purchase price in physical gold first. For the average person, that could take a lifetime, or even prove impossible. Major life milestones like homeownership, starting a business, or even higher education would be delayed by decades, fundamentally altering the arc of a human life and severely limiting social mobility. On the global stage, international trade would be completely redrawn, no longer shaped by comparative advantage or trade agreements, but by the stark reality of national gold reserves. Countries with large legacy reserves like the United States, Germany, or China would find themselves in a position of immense power. They could import goods with relative ease, settling any trade deficits by physically shipping gold bars to their trading partners. Their vast stores of gold would become a primary foreign policy tool, giving them enormous leverage in geopolitical negotiations and allowing them to dictate terms to the rest of the world. Conversely, gold-poor nations would face severe existential challenges. To import essential goods like fuel, medicine, or advanced technology, they would have no choice but to export their own goods and labor in exchange for physical gold, triggering a desperate global scramble for the yellow metal. This imbalance creates a new, brutal form of economic colonialism. The development and survival of entire nations would become dependent on the whims and demands of the gold-rich powers. The logistics of this new system would be staggering. Settling large international balances means physically transporting tons of gold across oceans, a process requiring immense security, specialized transport, and hardened port infrastructure. The immense costs and risks would discourage long-distance trade, encouraging regional self-sufficiency and fracturing the globalized economy. A new global gold rush would begin, with prospecting and mining becoming top national security priorities for every country. Widespread environmental devastation would inevitably follow, as nations tear apart landscapes in the frantic search for new deposits. Geopolitical conflict would ignite over disputed gold-rich territories, turning dormant border disagreements into active flashpoints. The world map would no longer be defined merely by political borders and cultural spheres of influence, but by the cold, hard geology of gold. In a world where all currency is gold, wealth transforms from an abstract number on a screen into a tangible physical object. It can be held, admired, and weighed in your hands. But this very tangibility is a double-edged sword. Anything that can be held can also be taken. Your life savings are no longer protected by digital firewalls and encryption, but by the strength of your locks and the thickness of your walls. Every ounce of gold you own becomes a potential target, a glittering lure for the desperate or the greedy. In this new reality, personal security would escalate from a background thought to a dominant, everyday concern. The casual safety of hiding cash in a sock drawer would be a forgotten luxury. Instead, homes would transform into personal fortresses. You'd need heavy, bolted-down safes, sophisticated alarm systems, reinforced doors, and barred windows. Protecting your wealth becomes a constant, expensive, and exhausting endeavor, a new, privatized tax on prosperity. This pervasive fear of theft would inevitably poison the well of community. A siege mentality would take hold, eroding the trust between neighbors and fostering a culture of deep-seated suspicion. Every friendly gesture could be questioned. Every new face on the street viewed as a potential threat. The open, welcoming neighborhood would be replaced by a collection of isolated strongholds, each warily watching the other. Leaving your home unattended, even for a short time, would trigger intense anxiety. Vacations would become logistical nightmares of arranging guards or transferring assets to secure locations. The psychological burden of constantly protecting your physical wealth would be immense, a low-level hum of stress that never truly fades. Out of this fear, a booming security industry emerges. Private vaults, armored transport services, and personal bodyguards become commonplace. But these protections are luxuries, available only to those who can afford them. This creates a stark and visible divide in society. A new class system based not just on wealth, but on the ability to physically protect it. Consequently, a two-tiered system of justice forms. The wealthy can afford private security that is often more effective than public law enforcement, while everyone else is left vulnerable. Crime would likely increase and change in nature, shifting from digital fraud to brutal, physical robbery, home invasions, muggings, and violent attacks on businesses would become the new norm. Beyond the immediate problem of security, gold's fundamental nature poses a deeper economic problem: its absolute scarcity. The total amount of gold ever mined in human history is estimated to be around 200,000 metric tons. That's a finite, fixed supply that grows by only 1 to 2% each year. In a growing global economy with an expanding population and increasing productivity, a fixed money supply creates a dangerous economic condition: deflation. This is a general decrease in prices, where your money becomes more valuable over time. While that might sound good on the surface, it's disastrous for a dynamic economy. When people expect prices to fall, they delay spending, waiting for their gold to be worth more tomorrow. This causes demand to collapse. Worse, it crushes anyone with debt. If you borrow 100 grams of gold to start a business, and deflation causes prices and wages to fall by half, you still owe 100 grams, a debt that is now twice as hard to repay. Deflation punishes borrowers and entrepreneurs while rewarding savers and hoarders. In this environment, investment and risk-taking are stifled. Why risk your gold on a new venture when the safest and most profitable strategy is to simply hold on to it and watch its value rise? Money, the lifeblood of commerce, stops circulating. It might be stable, but the economy it's meant to serve grows stagnant and brittle. This reveals a fundamental flaw. A scarce commodity cannot adapt to the needs of a growing, dynamic society. Scarcity, the very quality that gives gold its allure, is also its greatest economic weakness. The world would find itself shackled, not by iron chains, but by a beautiful, immutable golden cage. And yet, amidst the immense challenges of security and deflation, a gold-only system would offer one surprising, profound, and powerful benefit: an absolute end to inflation. Governments and central banks would lose the ability to create money out of thin air. They could not print currency to finance deficit spending or artificially stimulate the economy. The money supply would be rigidly fixed by the amount of physical gold in circulation. This would create incredible, long-term price stability, safeguarding the value of savings for everyone, especially retirees and those on fixed incomes whose purchasing power is so often eroded by inflation. The cost of a loaf of bread, measured in grams of gold, could plausibly remain the same not just for years, but for decades. This predictability would revolutionize finance. Long-term financial planning would become rational and transparent, free from the guesswork of future inflation rates. With the corrosive uncertainty of inflation removed, the entire focus of finance could shift from short-term speculation to long-term value creation. Capital could be allocated with confidence to very long-horizon projects that are unthinkable today, building infrastructure designed to last for centuries, funding scientific studies that span generations, or creating works of art meant to endure for millennia. A gold standard imposes strict discipline. Without a printing press, politicians can only spend tax revenue or borrow physical gold, making large deficits far harder. Governments live within their means, make hard choices, potentially becoming smaller, more efficient, with reduced wasteful spending. Boom and bust cycles might smooth into a more stable, if slower, economy. Internationally, responsible gold reserve management builds trust. Gold-backed currencies of disciplined nations become global safe havens, attracting investment and talent, even with limited credit. The system is rigid, but predictability becomes a valuable asset, stripping complexity to offer a simple, unwavering anchor. As the new golden society settles, a startling twist emerges. Because gold is hard to store and transact, a new class of intermediaries becomes essential. Owners of the most secure vaults, operators of verification systems, and controllers of digital ledgers tracking ownership. Power re-centralizes in their hands. This reveals a deeper truth. Money is never truly independent. It always relies on a system of trust and verification. In the old world, that was central banks and governments. In the new world, it becomes private corporations holding terrifying power, able to freeze accounts, impose fees, share data, even sway perceived reserves. The dream of escaping centralized control yields a new, less accountable centralization. The great reveal is that gold, the symbol of freedom from a flawed system, would create a new system even more rigid, more unequal, and ultimately more oppressive, an aristocracy of gold holders and a serfdom of everyone else. Without access to credit, venture capital, and fluid labor markets, innovation stagnates. The economy becomes a zero-sum game. The system's rigidity, its supposed strength, becomes its fatal flaw. It cannot adapt. It cannot foster growth. It cannot provide opportunity. The journey reveals stark trade-offs. We would exchange the risk of inflation for the certainty of stagnation, the convenience of digital transactions for the slow reality of physical exchange, the danger of bank failures for the constant threat of theft. Money is a social technology built on shared belief. The choice is not between paper and gold, but between a dynamic, flexible world built on confidence and a static, rigid world demanding physical proof. Which world do we have the courage to build? You've been watching IfVerse, where imagination meets possibility. See you in the next reality. Curiosity score for the topic, 9.1 out of 10. Title tests: 1. When gold rules everything. 2. The day money died, the golden reset. 3. Trapped in a world of gold. Thumbnail hooks: 1. The golden reset. 2. Money is metal. 3. Cash is dead. Payoffs locked. Mini reveal at 4:30. Grand reveal at 9:30. Exports ready. Standard 12-minute version and a condensed 10:30 cut with tighter transitions. Same story arc, faster pacing.